Well, good morning. It's Trey Malacote from a bench on Crystal Beach. It is really great to be with you today. And today I want to talk about the 10 most powerful ways to create a new life for yourself. But I have to begin by telling you how we create the life that we are currently living in. And that really is based on clinging to the narratives that we've created in our lives, clinging to the narratives of our past. And here's what I know. These narratives, these stories that we create are simply a story, a narrative based on conditions and judgments and expectations, and ultimately a story that's based on the past. Now, these narratives are the stories that form our identity, for which we fight boldly for. We will fight to maintain our stories at any cost because they are what our identity is based on. But here's the real fact of the matter. These narratives that we hold are the place in which all of our suffering stands as well. It's as if the stories that we hold, if something does not fit within that narrative, if something fits outside of the story that we've created about what should be or what could be or what we wish the world would be, then all of a sudden we suffer because we're living outside of our narrative. But here's what I know. The narratives that we hold are simply the prisons of our own minds, the prisons that keep us from evolving, those past stories of perceptions and expectations. And so today what I want to talk about is what really those stories do for us. And ultimately, I believe that the stories that we hold, the past narratives that we hold, are the things that literally keep us stagnant and stuck and small. Now, what I'd like you to think about is, do you feel stagnant or stuck or small in any aspect of your life? Because if you do, the 10 tips I'm going to give you today are going to change your life. And what I'm hopeful for is that if you like this information, you'll share this information with someone, because frankly, I think this is life-changing. Our stories come from our past and our present. How we should have been, and how we should be. That's really what it comes down to. These past narratives, these stories that we continue to keep alive in our lives are the things that keep us oppressed and keep us small. So if you want to step into a new life, if you want to step in and start creating a future that is bold and dynamic and beautiful and vibrant, if you want to step out of the pain and the suffering that you're living with today, and by the way, I want you to buckle your seatbelt, because as I give you these 10 tips, what I know is that if you'll implement these 10 tips, they'll change your life so radically that the past stories don't even work any longer. But here's the ultimate thing that I know. In order to write the new stories, you must believe that you are capable of writing the new narrative. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to grab your pen and paper, and I want you to write down these 10 tips for stepping into a new narrative. Now, by the way, before I give you these 10 tips, you're asking, where do these stories come from? Well, they come from the past experiences you've had, your perceptions of success or failure, the way that you thought life should be, how you wished your life would be or could be. The stories have been created by people in your life about how you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to live. And here's what I know. All of those stories are simply an illusion. So, here we go. Number one, I want you to begin by asking yourself this one really powerful question. Now, frankly, I think you could spend an hour or two or even a day or 4 days thinking about this one question. Are you ready? Here it is. How would you ultimately like your life to look and feel? Who do you want to be with? Where do you want to go? What kind of people do you want in your life? What kind of work do you want to do? What gives your heart purpose and your soul the fire that it needs to step boldly into the world? So that's the first question I want you to begin with. How do you want your life to look and feel? And when you can really flesh that out, you'll begin to see the narratives that you're living within, the narratives that are keeping you oppressed. And then you can start to write new narratives. Here's number 2. Now, I've had a lot of fights about this conversation because we have this belief that our past actually serves some purpose, but I think that's a bunch of horse shit. I don't think our past does anything for us because we've already lived it. I've heard people say that our past is our reference point. Our past is our way of knowing what mistakes not to make. Our past is the place in which our education resides. And I think all of that is a bunch of crap because, frankly, our past is already done. And if you believe that you are evolving and getting better and better every day in every way, your past serves no purpose. So here's number 2. Abandon your past. Because frankly, it is not your reference point. Your reference point is today, right now, this moment, what you want to do, and it's based on how you want your life to look and feel. Now, here's the third thing I want you to do, and this is a powerful one. I want you to live in a place of curiosity. I want you to stand in the place of what if and what is possible, and how can your life unfold in a way that perhaps you might not even understand, because I personally believe that we're foolish to believe that we can even really fully understand how we're growing and how we're evolving, but we simply have to put ourselves in a place of forward motion. You know, an object placed in motion stays in motion. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to stand in a place of curiosity. Curiosity about people, curiosity about you, curiosity about why you think about certain things, curiosity about your thoughts and emotions, and I simply want you to hold those thoughts and emotions when they come into your mind. Here's an example. If you have a day where you're feeling sad or depressed or discouraged, I want you to feel that feeling and I want you to simply hold it and say, that's an interesting perception. That's an interesting way of looking at things. And then by standing in a place of curiosity, you can say to yourself, how can I look at this differently? How can I look at my experiences through a new lens? And that ultimately is standing in a place of curiosity. It's also looking at people differently, because when we stand in our old stories, we judge people, we have expectations for people, and that influences our relationships greatly. But if you stand in a place of curiosity, you give people the opportunity to grow into a new narrative as well. I want you to, number 4, educate the others in your life, those people that are most dear and near to your heart, to help you write your narrative differently. Now, what you have to do, though, is you have to educate others to stop referencing your old narrative. I'll give you an example. My partner and I the other day were at the grocery store. And I am very curious about all sorts of people, young people, old people. It doesn't matter who they are. I'm just curious about folks. And so I struck up a conversation with this kid that was bagging the groceries. And I was asking him about social media and different things because I'm fascinated by the world that these kids live in today. And as we were walking out of the parking lot, Eric said, "You're that creepy old guy." And for a moment, I thought to myself, am I that creepy old guy? No, I'm not that creepy old guy. So my head spun around and I said to him, if that's the narrative in which you choose to hold me, then that narrative will never change. And if you want me to grow and evolve and become the best person possible, then I'd ask you to monitor the way that you think my narrative should be. Now, here's the interesting thing. The whole creepy old guy narrative was a narrative that he holds because somewhere in his life, he had had an experience with a creepy old guy who happened to not be me. But he was projecting those thoughts and those ideas onto me. Here's number 5. I want you to live in possibility rather than fear. What is the possibility that you can step into? What is the dream or the vision that you could possibly have? What is the possibility for your future and who you're with? And I want you to strip away all the limitations, because when you live in possibility, what you do is you step out of fear. But here's the key. Your fear is where your narratives hold you. Your narratives are simply a protection system that you've set in place that keep you from a place of fear. If you want to live in a place of curiosity and if you want to live in a place of possibility, you have to know that there might be pieces that cause you fear. There might be experiences that you are uncertain about. There might be people that you don't understand that you encounter that you must seek to understand. Now, here's number 6. I want you to, as you step into these new narratives, as you're writing your new book, as you're stepping into a new place where you're writing the new story of your life, I want you to trust yourself. Trust your knowledge, trust your experience, trust your intuition, trust your perception, trust everything, trust your gut. Because when you can trust your gut, then you can step into a place of faith. That's faith in yourself, faith in others, and faith in your God. Now, number 7, I want you to practice your new narratives. And that is simply by waking up every day and saying, you know, that was an old story. What is the new story that I'm writing today? How do I want people to perceive me? What kind of work do I want to do? What kind of joy do I want to bring into my life? What kind of love do I want to attract? I want you to practice the new narratives, because when you step into the new skin, think about it this way. I was just working with a guy in Denver a couple of weeks ago, and we did a 4-day deep dive in his life. And basically what we did was we rewrote his narratives. But by the way that we did that was by looking at his past narratives. 4 days, 57 hours of looking at the old stories and asking the question, do these stories fit? Do these stories work? And is that the story that you want to live into? Is that the narrative that you want your life to be based on moving forward? He called me the other day, and he had just gotten back from a long vacation after the 4-day work that I did with him. And he said, I walked into my house today, Trey, and this isn't my home any longer. And this is not my life any longer. And I don't know what to do. I'm scared to death. And I said, well, here's the thing, brother. You simply have to step into that new narrative. If that's not your home, then make it your home now. If those are not your peeps, then find some new folks. If that's not your work, then let's create new work. But it's about practicing your narratives. Now, here's what I also know, and this is point number 8. When you're stepping into a new narrative, you must celebrate the challenges in your life. Because if you can't celebrate the challenges, then what you do is you run as quickly back as you possibly can. You run quickly to the past, because that's where your fear resides. That's where your old narratives reside. And so the challenges in your life as you're creating the new narrative are simply the indication that you can no longer run back to the old stories that used to work. Now, here's point number 9. I want you to manage your perceptions and your reactions. Now, here's what's interesting. We live in a world where we think we can control everything. Control others, control our thoughts, control our emotions, control our work, control our environment, control our government, yada, yada, yada. And you know, here's what I know. You can control 2 things. You can control how you perceive things and how you react to things. And so as you're practicing the new narratives, I want you to manage your perceptions and your reactions. If you flare up and you think something, you have a judgment or a criticism or an expectation, or you have a thought about someone, I want you to simply know that all those judgments, criticisms, expectations, and thoughts are based on your old story. And so by stepping into a place of curiosity, you then can say, okay, am I perceiving this through my old lenses, or am I perceiving this through my new lenses? And the next big decision is, how am I going to react to what I'm perceiving? Am I going to be angered if someone says, hey, you're the creepy old guy? Or am I going to simply say, hey, that's not my story anymore, brother? Are you going to be challenged and react in an angry sort of way if somebody calls the question on how you're living? Or are you going to simply say, you know what, I'm practicing and I'm stepping into a new narrative, and maybe you don't understand it, but here's the truth of the matter. This is my story. Not your story, not his story, my story. Now, the 10th thing I want to tell you, the 10th tip I want to give you, and I hope you write this one down. I want you to step into a world, step into your world, step into your new narratives, believing one powerful thing, that everything in your life is happening perfectly and brilliantly, because you're being held in an energy by something bigger and greater and much more powerful than yourself, that loves you boldly, cares for you wildly, and holds you intimately. Now, here's what I know. If you choose to change your narratives, you better buckle your seatbelt, because, frankly, your life is going to change. And what I also know is that when you change your narratives, you give people space. You give yourself the space to expand and to grow and to evolve into the much more powerful creature that you really are. So here's the bottom line in my mind. Your past narratives keep you small, keep you oppressed, keep you weak, keep you suffering. And if you have suffering in your life, if you have struggle and challenge in your life, maybe it's time to write a new narrative. I'm Trey Malacote from a bench on Crystal Beach.